Welcome to the premiere episode of Anthony Martinez Reports in the Conversation. We're truly honored to launch the series with a remarkable guest, Mr. Derrick Lawson, who is a well-respected educator and an administrator, currently principal of Indio High School, whose career has spanned over 4 decades. Today we dive into his journey, his legacy, and the lessons he's leaving behind as he retires. Let's get into the conversation. It was a joyful one and a tearful one. Mr. Lawson, thank you for joining us for the premiere episode of AMR in the Conversation. Tell us a bit about your background and how you kind of came into education and now as principal.
Well, thank you first for letting me be a guest. This is kind of exciting. Well, it all started actually after I graduated from high school. During high school, I never imagined I'd be a principal, much less a teacher either. But Indio High School teachers made a huge difference, and I told that story to students every year in August when we'd have our back to school event, that I understood what their lives were like because I had some big challenges when I was their age and had to overcome those, and it was teachers and an assistant principal at the school that made a difference for me. When I finished college, I had a degree in business and needed to make sure I had all my college loans paid off and everything done, and the person in the district office that runs personnel had called because their secretary was my mom's cousin, and she said, we need a substitute teacher for business and for math, and you could do like calculus and the top math classes, and you could do our business classes. So I started substituting from March after my graduation, because I graduated early from Cal State, and substituted all the way till June, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And being an auditor and an accountant, which is what my degree was in, I didn't like because it was always boring behind a desk and nobody would talk. They were all crunching numbers. Nobody would talk. And you know me, I love to talk. So being an auditor was no fun for me. And so then one of the principals at one of the school I substituted at said, you should become a teacher. We'd love to have you back. And so I said, okay. So I went to school at night all summer, started taking my credential classes and started teaching. And I fell in love with it. After a couple of years teaching in Coachella Unified at both high school level and at elementary level, then my 5th grade teacher had become a principal. She called me up and said, I would love for you to come teach for me. So I came back to Desert Sands. I taught at Jackson School, followed her to Roosevelt and Monroe, and she gave me opportunities to do some extra duty after school to learn some administrative things and said, you should look at becoming a principal. So I did, and I fell in love with it, and that's been my journey for the last 40 years.
Wow, that's incredible. So during your time as a teacher, tell me, what are things that you learned and kind of like what students taught you?
One of the first things I learned from students is they may not remember every single lesson I ever taught. I don't remember every single lesson I was ever taught, but I do remember the individuals that made a difference in my life. And what I learned from students is they want to be seen, heard, and valued. And they want to know that they are capable and have the potential to learn on their own, and for me to help them unlock the secrets of how can I be a learner, how can I figure this out on my own. When I don't have the teacher in front of me, how can I still learn on my own in my future and unlock my future? And I think that's the one thing I learned the most from students.
Tell me, so as you went as a teacher, you became principal. What was that first day like, and kind of what led you to that position?
Well, for my 5th grade teacher that became a principal, I did a lot of extra things after school. She would pay me extra duty is what they call it. I would earn extra pay in the evenings and summers to do projects to help the school, working on their calendar, coordinating events, putting together some different things. And I kind of got my fingers in some of those pots working on some administrative tasks, and I really enjoyed it. I would coordinate and put together some new programs that we were going to do as a school, both with teachers and students. And she said, you have organizational skills that I think you could put to work, and you have some ability to get people to come together and participate together, and think you should pursue it. So I took courses to become an administrator, and that's kind of how the door opened. My first day as a principal was really interesting. It was the middle of a school year because the principal before had gone out on medical emergency and was going to have to be gone. They had surgery and some other issues, physical health issues. So I was taking over a school to finish out the year and then came back to become that full-time principal. My first day there, I just remember walking. It's interesting because I've had a couple of different first days. My first day as a principal was 31 years ago. And I remember walking in the door being a nervous wreck because I knew the things that I did know, but I also knew there was a lot I didn't know. And as I looked around that school, there were a lot of students in that room that their moms and dads were people I grew up with. And I felt like I have a huge response. I was nervous because I had this huge responsibility. And I remember one of the parents saying, "You better behave at school today because Mr. Lawson and I were next door neighbors and we were friends growing up. And if you misbehave, he's going to tell me." And I remember thinking, I've got to be responsible for the kids of my best friends and the people I grew up with. And if I screw this up and don't do a good job, I'm letting down all of my neighborhood and all the people I grew up with. I think I was a little nervous that first day. But that first day was also one of the most awesome because I walked out and I walked into a kindergarten classroom to read to the class, and the next thing I knew, half of the kids were sitting in my lap while I'm trying to show the book. It was a shower of love and affection from the students that I remember. My first day here was very unique. I started July 1, 2016, coming back after being at Page Middle School, and I walked in that day. And I set up my office, and I think I was only here maybe 30 minutes, and my first visitor showed up, and it was my old PE teacher, Coach Thompson. I can't call him by his first name. He always says, "Just call me Paul." I can't. I just can't. He was my coach, and he was my teacher, and he used to be the athletic director before Mr. Shipley, before Mr. Ovidio Machado, way back. He was the athletic director. Graduated from here in 1963, superstar athlete. His picture's on the wall of fame in the gym. He was my first visitor, and he came in and gave me this big hug and said, "You're going to do great. We have a lot of confidence in you. You're our first graduate to come home and be principal, and we don't want you to be nervous about that. You carry all the Raja history on your shoulders, and we believe in you." That was the best visit. And then right before I got ready to go home late that evening, I had another visit. It was the first student to visit me. His name was Oscar. Loved Oscar. Oscar found out that I was the new principal. He was going to be a senior. So all of his friends talked, and Oscar was the emissary. So they all sent him to check out, okay, who is this new guy? What is he going to be like? Does he speak Spanish? Is he nice? Is he going to like us? How's he going to treat us? What's this guy going to be like? So he came to scope things out and to check me out. It didn't take very long. I won him over, and Oscar and I ended up being two of the best friends and in my first graduating class. But he was my first student to come visit me on that July day, 2016.
So your career has spent almost 40 years. You said 31 as principal, so majority principal. Tell me, how was that becoming principal, the first principal to be a former Raja? What kind of weight did you carry at the beginning, and where are you at now, and how do you feel on the success you made?
Walking in the door, I felt a tremendous, not negative weight in the sense of bearing a lot of weight on my shoulders, but I walked in the door feeling a tremendous sense of history, legacy, and responsibility, because having been a graduate of this school and knowing how much it meant to me and how it changed my life, I also knew, I grew up in Indio. I remember when Indio only had 14,000 people back when I was in third grade, and now it's 90, almost 100,000. It's in the high 90s. And I knew so many of the history of the school, so many people all those years. I know, I grew up here, so I know tons and tons of people in the city, former graduates, former teachers. And to be the first one to come back, all the messages I got when I was first named principal, I was going to say hundreds. No, it was more in the thousands. So it took me weeks to get through all the messages I got, notes and messages. Of people saying, "Oh, we're so proud our Raja's come home to be principal." And this sense of carrying on a legacy, maintaining traditions, bringing some of the original traditions back was a huge weight that I felt, a responsibility that I felt. Another piece to that is I'm not young. Having done this for 40 years, you can tell I have to be at least 60. I just turned 63. And when I came back, here's another funny first day. My first day as principal, out when the students came back and we're welcoming everyone through the gates. My first day at the gate, and I'm out there welcoming everybody, waving at all the people dropping kids off, driving by. And one young lady gets out of her car, comes up to the gate, hands me an envelope, and inside was a picture, and she said, my grandma told me to hand you this. And I said, oh, well, thank you. I thought it was just a card, and I pulled it open. She says, yeah, she was your date to one of your homecomings. And so her grandma was one of the people I dated way back when I was a sophomore in high school. And that moment in time and ever since has really been a tremendous, not burden, but a tremendous sense of austerity and legacy for me, because there are grandparents of students here that I grew up with and went to school with. Their parents, I taught them at Roosevelt or Monroe or Jackson or Eisenhower or Wilson. I was their teacher. Several. We have probably a couple of dozen students now that I taught their parents my last year, the last couple of years that I was a teacher. And then to have all students now that I grew up with the grandparents, I taught the parents, and I have teachers here that I was their principal when they were in Jackson or Johnson and Kennedy and Page Middle. So there was just this sense of not obligation, but really honoring the legacy and helping the new generation of Rajas to come to this school understand what a tremendous honor. I mean, everyone that went to this school, we always tell everyone, we really bleed red and blue. I mean, once a Raja, always a Raja. And so I wanted students to really understand that.
Did you think you were going to come back to Indio as principal?
I never imagined that as a possibility. I never dreamed. When I first started out, I substituted here way back. My first year, I substitute taught here a couple of times. But when I first started, I was elementary, and I loved it. And after I was at Kennedy, then I opened a new elementary school, and I thought I'd do that forever. Then I went to middle school, and I thought I'd do that forever. And while I was at middle school, then I thought for a while, I looked at the possibility of moving up. I looked at a couple of district positions and moving higher up. And then I decided, no, that's not for me. That's not for me. For me, success is not the paycheck or becoming an assistant superintendent. I love those people. I respect them. They're my bosses. But that wasn't for me. For me, satisfaction and coming back to India, coming to here was the pinnacle of my career, because for me, being with you guys, being with students, and knowing that I can make a difference every day in the lives of someone. I don't want to make a difference in what curriculum's chosen. I don't want to make a difference in what policies have been adopted. I want to make the difference in the lives of the kids whose parents I taught, the grandparents I grew up with, the people that are part of my life. And so when I had the opportunity, Mr. Ramirez had called me because he was going to be retiring. And he says, I don't want just anybody to come to Indio. I just don't want just anybody. And he says, so you're going to apply. I had his daughter at my elementary school. I was her principal before. And he and I had been friends for, and he says, I don't want just anybody. It has to be a Raja. And so that's when I chose to apply. And it was the smartest decision I think I could have ever made.
Tell me about your time as a student, that kind of what are things that you personally changed or you've seen change as now principal versus when you were a student?
Oh, so many things are so different from way back then. The sense of family is still the same. What I tell students now, the connection that everybody feels like everybody belongs, everybody's a family, that is Indio High School since it opened. The very first principal was Mr. Alex Alexander. And I went to school with his daughter, Allie. He had an older son that graduated as I was coming in, he was going out. So but we would tease him because he was called Triple A. We'd call him Triple A. I don't think he liked that, but because his initials, AA, and he was Alexander Jr. But so I went to school with all of them. The dad had already retired. He was the first principal for 11 years here. And he began a legacy that this was truly a sense of family. Indio High School started as Coachella Valley Unified CV High Schools Part 2. CV got really huge. Desert Sands did not exist, so Indio High School was born from the overloaded, crowded size of the school. And some of the staff came from CV with him. And so he really generated the school as a sense of family. And over the entire 66 years, Indio has never lost that. We've always been a true family where everybody has a place, everybody belongs, and we don't care if you're tall, short, skinny, wish they were skinny, blonde hair, dark hair, no matter what language you believe, no matter what political persuasion you have, no matter what your orientation is, everybody fits, everybody belongs. And that's always been the case. That's the same. Back then, we were a 6-period day, not an 8-period day. And pep rallies were a little different because we didn't have them fall, winter, spring. We had pep rallies in the fall on the weeks there were home games, and that was it. So we didn't really get to celebrate, winter sports and spring sports and some of the things like that. We didn't have a prom pep rally. That's the thing that's changed that I love, that some of the school spirit things. But we were very spirited then and still very spirited now. But the campus has changed. But one thing that has not is that sense of family, sense of connection, and the sense of pride that exists being a part of the school. That's not different. The original campus was built in rows like barracks. It was built back in the 50s, that was the style. Several schools were built that way. I love our new campus. Instead, it feels like a miniature college campus built in the round, all around the central hub. I got to be part of the first senior quad. We had a plaque there. We put all the outdoor concrete furniture was from the class of 80 when we rebuilt the campus. Another thing that's the same is construction. I don't think everyone says, oh, this took 8 years to build. I remember the 3-year build when I was a student because they were rebuilding parts of the campus. Everyone says, oh, the theater's new. That's theater number 3. The one everybody remembers was theater number 2. That's not the original. That was under construction when I was a student.
Oh,
the
wow.
library was under construction. The office was one little tiny rectangle, and all the office that everybody thought was the original, probably 3/4 of the office building before this was constructed was construction number 2 back in 1977 and 1978 when I was a student. So the library was under construction, the activities office, the lunch. We didn't have a cafeteria. Way out here by the stadium was this little tiny concession stand, and that's where they brought all the food, and we ate under an umbrella, a giant umbrella, red and blue umbrella out here on the dirt next to the parking lot. So where Raja Park was this giant covered umbrella thing, and we ate out here, and that was where our cafeteria was because all the campus was under construction. So having construction projects is nothing new, and having it take a long time is nothing new.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go next, is the campus went under 8-year renovation. So multiple classes graduated from freshman year to senior year. Tell me, you came in a few years before the campus opened in January of 2018. Tell me, how was that like coming in as a newly built campus from when you were here and seeing it bigger and better? And
it was really exciting because I got to be the principal of 2 brand new schools. From the moment they broke ground with shovels and there was nothing. I'd opened a brand new elementary, Johnson. I opened Page, which was a brand new school. And then to come here when they had torn down most of the campus, it wasn't all demolished when I got here. They were still demolishing. The back campus, what we call the IE wing with the portables and the old industrial arts and ceramics and band and the old theater, all that was still here and was being demolished or going to be demolished. So when I got here, we had 3 campuses. We had the front buildings, which was the office building with counseling, the 300 and the 400. They had just opened the gym, and to get there, you had to go all the way down Raja Lane Way, all the way behind all the construction. Back there was behind the 7 and 800 wing, and behind the pool, way back there, were portables and the old industrial arts building. And then across the street on the parking lot were portables. Everything on the inside was under construction. So it was always loud and it was noisy and it was always dusty that first year and a half because they were either demolishing buildings or building buildings. So we had dust and tractors and cranes. And it was noisy. But to be able to see it and then move in sections, that winter break before we moved in, the 7 and 800, 500, 700, 800 was really exciting for me. I worked every day those 2 weeks because every day we had loads and loads of furniture and equipment and things walk in, and to be able to walk in and teachers setting up their new rooms and having everything ready for the first day of January after winter break was really exciting. And I think my favorite thing is we had like a mini grand opening in the quad. Some of the teachers that were here way back when I was a student showed up, which was kind of nice. One of my English teachers that had retired showed up, and Miss Gunther, who was a math teacher here, rushed over to kind of introduce them because they didn't know very many people. But there were still a few people that were here back then. So she was going around and helping to introduce them to folks. But we had a big lunchtime rally and celebration to kind of open the new campus, and that was a lot of fun.
While researching the high school, there was a time where the district was planning to close the school before its renovation. Tell me, if India High School would not exist anymore, what would the surrounding valley be like, and where would you be? Where do you think you would have been?
Oh, well, a couple of years before the construction started, they were looking at the campus because when it was built, buildings built back in the mid-50s had lead, asbestos, and things in it, lead paint and all that. And they were looking at, is it worth rebuilding, and what's the reputation of the school, what's the performance of the school? And so the principal rallied the staff really well and the students, and they hustled and they raised their achievement by 77 points in one school year.
Wow.
And so the school board said, okay, we were being hasty, we're not going to demolish or close the school. Back then there were about 3,000 students. You're getting close to that. So what they originally were going to do is then they decided they would build Shadow and they would close Indio. And that would be Indio High School, not Shadow. It was going to be just Indio High School rebuilt because it had a larger amount, what they call the footprint. The property itself was larger and more spread out. So they were actually going to relocate Indio there and repurpose this property, sell it. The city, I think, the city was revamping things, and that's, the teen center was being built, it wasn't there yet.
Oh, wow.
The senior center was not there. It was downtown in the old police department. The teen center was not there. The county rec center was not there yet, but Indio had huge plans for what they were going to do in this area. And so as a partnership between the city and the school district, then their decision was, and the numbers kept growing. Indio was growing like it's being on elastic. It was just growing fast. So they really found out building another high school and building it for a 4,000 student campus is not the smartest thing. There are schools that are successful that are that huge, but we do know that smaller is better. So they built Shadow to be able to accommodate about 2,000, and they decided to renovate this one, which I think was the smartest decision. This is where the heritage and history of the city was, and we'd been featured in their 90th birthday commercial and all. And there's a lot of pride and a lot of background here. So they chose to rebuild and revamp this whole section in front of the school. The reason the project took so long, a lot of people will try to blame and find all these reasons. Well, there's a couple things that happened. Number one is the economy went south right in the middle of that, so everything had to kind of stop. Because the city redid this whole street, they had to resubmit the plans to the Department of the State Architect, because originally they were going to put the stadium where the office is, tear that down, and then put the office facing Clinton. And so then when they decided to turn the school back the way it is now, because of all the connection with the teen center, senior center, rec building, and all the things that the city, and originally they were even thinking about the city was going to build the new library instead of downtown. It was going to be where the grocery store was.
Oh, wow.
So while the city was looking at all this, they resubmitted the plans to be redone. The state architect approved them, but then the economy went crazy. And so instead of everything costing, prices went way up, like almost double. So they had to scale the plans for this back. And instead of building it in 2 to 3 years, it had to stretch it out over several more in order to have the money to do it. Because when you pass a bond for the voters, you can't use that money for anything else. What you say you're going to do and what they approve, that's what you spend. And if you have to wait for some of the interest because you're running out of money, then you can't spend the interest. You can spend the bonds that you're selling, but the interest, you have to wait and earn the interest. So it took a little longer to get there, but in my opinion, it was worth it, because now if you look at all the other schools, nothing bad about the other schools, but each time they would build one, they would ask the staff and the students, what on your campus could we improve? By being last, we got the best improvements because they learned from the others, what to change. So instead of building ours in rows, ours are around a central quad. Instead of putting our lecture hall way in the corner, ours is right in the middle. When you walk in some of the classrooms, now when they redo classrooms, they do some of those rooms the same as ours. So we really do have the best design because we were one of the last, because they learned from each building what to fix on the next one or what to improve.
So if India would have closed, the city would continue growing, meaning there would have been a chance a school would have had to be rebuilt.
Eventually they might have had to build another.
Yeah. And we also heard that La Quinta might go under renovation. Do you feel like they're going to take as long as you guys did?
No, I don't think they will. La Quinta's renovation is not one where they have to rebuild the campus. It's really a modernization for theirs. It's not a rebuild. They weren't built in the time with lead paint, asbestos, and all that. They've done some they've done some modernization there, and they've built, like all their CTE and culinary and that whole back wing. So when a school gets 30 years old, you get funding from the state that matches what your local community raises, and that's what helps you to modernize the building. So some of the modernization there will be done in phases, and it won't take as long, probably 18 months to 2 years maximum, but they won't need to tear down the campus to do that.
I want to move now to school life and leadership. Tell me what's unique about Indio High School, its students, its staff, its members.
Okay, several things that I think are unique. Number one is that we have about 1/3 of all the people that work here. We have 159 people that work here when you count custodians, office, teachers, paraeducators, cafeteria. When you take everybody, we have 159. We have about 1/3 of them that were graduates of the school. So I'm not the only one that's come back. I'm the first one to come back as principal, but not the only one to come back. And there's a strong sense, a lot of people want to come here that worked here because they want to give back. Indio meant a lot to them, and they want to do the same thing for students. Just to name a couple, I know that in the last couple of years, Ms. Jimenez, Ms. Huerta are a couple that were students here, Ms. Ayala, Ms. Garcia, some of them that were students, and a couple of them were students, my first graduating class and second graduating class. They come back because there's something about Indio Indio High did something for them and they want to give back. I love that about our school. That's the first thing that's unique more than any other school in our district and more than any other school that I know of in Southern California. We have one of the highest rates of return for people that want to give back. That's one piece. The second one that's very unique about us is if you visit our campus, if you talk to guest teachers and you ask them about where they like to go and sub and what's different, and you ask people that visit our campus, they'll say, it just feels different. When we walk on campus, we don't feel like there's cliques. We know band kids will hang together. We know impact kids will like to hang together. We have groups, our theater group likes to hang together, but there's no cliques. Everybody just fits and belongs. Nobody looks around on campus and like, you don't belong here, you don't belong here. This is for us, not for you. They will tell you they love to come here because Indio, the students have tremendous respect. Guest teachers tell me all the time, the respect that I feel when I come here is off the charts, and that we feel like everybody's accepting. They may not believe the same, look the same, act the same, come from the same background, but when we get here, we're all the same. We're all Rajas, and we accept and treat each other. That's one thing that I think is the same. There has always been a tremendous loyalty at Indio High School from its very beginnings. There's a sense of Raja pride. The class of 2018 was the one that helped us put that into a written form. So what does PRIDE stand for? Positivity, respect, integrity, determination, and excellence. They helped put all those red and blue descriptors in place, but that has been in place for a long time, and that's one of the things that's unique about Indio. We don't say that we have those things, we live it. And if you ask people that visit our campus, they say, yeah, we can tell your kids live that. It's not just words on a piece of paper. They actually do act the way they say they're going to.
Going to Roger Pride, what are some accomplishments as a principal just for Indio High School over the past decade that you feel like you have accomplished at a greater level? What impacts do you think you have made and seen happen around campus?
Our staff and our students have accomplished a lot. I don't take credit for that. I looked around and we had California Scholarship Federation, and they used to do top 10, and then the district moved to what's called the Latin system, where we would recognize everyone with GPA levels, and it would be cum laude, magna cum laude, summa cum laude. And at first, our numbers were a little smaller, and I thought, we need a National Honor Society. Our kids deserve recognition. They deserve opportunities. We're just as good as anyone across the country. Not everybody always felt that way, but I did, and I wanted our students to feel that way. So I brought it up. Ms. Torres said, I was a National Honor student. I will be the advisor for you. And she took it and ran with it. So it wasn't that I did it, but my goal was to have the dreams, see the potential, see the possibility, throw it out there, and try to inspire people. And so as a result, she has taken National Honor Society and taken it off the charts. Student Council, I wanted it to be more than just running activities. I wanted them to be a true student council that hears student voice, and more than just governing activities, but really leadership and integrity and character and service. So Ms. Marina says, yes, sign me up. I'll take them to the next level with a national charter. And then it happened, and now we're off the charts. We've got kids representing us at national events and going to national conferences. So that's another. Expanding our AP program into dual enrollment so students can have college credit when they graduate. Said to Ms. Drian and Ms. Rodriguez, wouldn't this be wonderful if this could grow and our students could have those opportunities? And boom, they took off with it, talked to teachers working on master's degrees. The next thing we know, we have a huge number of dual enrollment. Some challenges with our schedule and the COD not be, theirs is not an AB the same as ours, so we have to coordinate, but it gave opportunities. Working with the class of 2018 to put pride, define what pride really looks like, sounds like, feels like, and what it is was another piece. It wasn't my doing, it was just me helping to foster that with getting all the right, I tell people it's like being on a bus. If I can get all the right people on a bus and get the bus going in the right direction, all I have to do is drive it. I don't have to make it do anything else. And so the class of 2018 rose to the challenge, and I had teachers and counselors that rose to the challenge and made it happen.
I want to talk a bit about leadership and leadership programs. You have pushed it to where they have traveled around the country for multiple conferences, but this March, you and Julian Cancino went to Washington, D.C. to meet with a few Congress people. Tell me, going outside of India High School, what does it mean to actually speak not only with local politicians and leaders, but on the national scale? And what's the message you're trying to get to them?
Well, if you have a medical problem, you go see a doctor. If you have a construction problem for something on your home, a plumbing problem, you go see a plumber. If you have an education problem in our country, what do? They go see a legislator. Wrong answer. Our legislators do a lot of hard work to pass public law and to help our government run smoothly, but they're not in the classroom. They don't know education firsthand. That's, all they know about education is what they experienced when they sat in a classroom. And the message needs to be, and for a long time I've done this, I've gone to Washington and Sacramento for state law and federal law for several years, and I'm so proud to get our student council and our ASB as a chapter that does that, and I'm even more proud that Julian could be a national student council rep to take them with me, because the message needs to be, we have to have a seat at the table. When they pass these rules and laws, education needs to have a seat at the table. Are they ever listening to teachers to say, here's what it's like in the real classroom, and some of these laws you're passing don't work for school, or they're making it harder? And are they listening to students? They need to be hearing student voice as to what's going to work. And I think my favorite thing this year was being able to have Julian join me. And when we went and talked to representative, he spoke to a representative in both parties, which was very, very interesting. And when a couple of his questions were very pointed, and it's like, well, what's your plan? Well, we will have a plan. No, what is your plan? Well, we'll have one, and I don't. And Julian kept pressing. He says, no, I'm going to be a voter. I'm graduating. I'm going to be a voter, and the things you're doing or not doing are going to affect my future and the future of every student that I go to school with. We deserve to know, what is your plan? What are you going to do? And are you even hearing us as to what we need to learn in school, or what we need as opportunities in the future so that we can be successful? And I think that's the key message, is we need our legislators, our policymakers to give education, to give teachers and students a seat at the table, visit our schools, see it in action, listen to us, and find out what is it that we need, what works, what doesn't, because some of these rules and laws that are passed are so disconnected to the regular everyday classroom. And they need to see it firsthand and make sure that we're heard.
Talking about that, over your years, you've seen both parties take leadership as an educator. What has changed? And now, if we continue to push forward to have people inside the classrooms have a seat, what do you see in the future actually happen?
Well, over the years, you've seen, if I drew you a grid, you'd see everyone, it's very interesting to see. The presidency and Congress, both houses, all three will change and flip-flop between the two parties. And instead of it being a straight line where all three have, like it is now, where the Senate, the House, and presidency are the same party, that's very rare, and they don't usually only last about 2 years, and then in the next election, one of those three changes. So it's more like a slanted line. So there's always one or two of those three are the opposing party. And I think that's healthy for our government, because then instead of everything just passing whatever the whims that anybody wants, it really makes the dialogue happen, and they have to collaborate, negotiate, argue, come to some consensus, and really be able to agree. And I think that's the one thing that's the strength of our government over time. Nothing stays in stone. So anything that happens now, 2 years from now, is going to be different. That's the one piece that I tell everyone. there's always hope that as things change that we have a voice. The second piece that I've seen over time is the younger generations. In my generation, we were called I was the very end of the baby boomers. I'm the youngest of the baby boomers, that bracket. And baby boomers tend to be very loyal and follow directions and stay put. But as you go through each generation changes. And so when you get to millennials and Generation Alpha, your generation, they want to have a voice. They want to be seen and heard. They can agree with things that don't go their way. If I get a vote and it goes the other way, but at least I've been able to have a voice. And as I've seen that happen, I think more and more we're seeing a government that's responding to saying, okay, now we need to hear from folks. And what's happening currently is a lot more of our young voters, instead of choosing a political party, are right in the middle and wanting to be independent for a while, which forces both sides to listen and to really try to win them over. And I think that's a good thing because it makes them more open to listening. So I think over time that's going to evolve even further, that you'll see more opportunity. And social media has helped that, and the ability to communicate. I mean, when I was growing up, we might write a letter to our congressman, we might not, and if we do, we may or may not get a response. Well, now I have a text message phone number. I'm in constant contact with our Congressman Ruiz and with our state legislators, Padilla, and I have instant access to all of them and can communicate with them left and right, and it makes it a lot easier because then we can share, come visit the school, here's how this looks. The law you just voted on, here's what that looks like in our school. Here's a couple students, ask them what that's going to mean for them. And I think the rapid amount of information in social media has made our legislators have to be a little more rapid response and a little more connected.
Moving to a few years back, COVID-19 hit, becoming a time of unknown. Your former assistant principal spoke with MSNBC, and he was talking about how he was knocking door to door, finding students when attendance dropped from 94% to what was the lowest 70%. Tell me, how was that time? How was it going through that? And what challenges were you able to solve? And how do you see schools now, after 5 years after the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, when the pandemic hit, it was an overwhelming, rapid disconnection from everyone. And we had to rapidly learn. My job then, at that point, was, number one, I had to help teachers get equipped to provide instruction and connection to students in ways we've never faced before. Luckily, I had spent a year with a team of our teachers. I had 9 of them that were on a committee. We were on a tech committee. And so we'd already been exploring Google Classroom for a year. Before the pandemic, back from September, we had a technology coach, Mrs. Furr, that's here a lot working with our students. She was here, and our 9 teachers helped lead the way, and we put together a 3-year plan. And 2 weeks before the pandemic, every teacher but 2 already had Google Classroom set up for every period, and we're already working with all of the structures we needed. We just hadn't done Zoom yet. So for us, moving to online learning was a lot easier than a lot of places and a lot faster. But I had to help them get equipped and learn. We had to get the equipment here, we had to get the materials here, and we had to learn the strategies. It was really difficult because for the first time we also were dealing with students and families in the unknown. So it was like, meals, being able, what am I gonna do? Because I rely on school lunch, school breakfast, and the after-school snack. What am I gonna do? We ran into that. We had students that this was their safe place. We had a lot of families that relied on the school. And then when the pandemic hit, some of the being isolated away from their friends, we had a lot of social, emotional illness issues. And kids, it's like if you take a plant and you don't give it water, you see the plant begin to wilt and fall over. Students began to wilt because they didn't have each other. And so that first effort was to really connect. So my job, I felt, aside from equipping teachers, was to try to maintain normalcy. So like your broadcast every day, I started doing a broadcast every day because I had no kids here. So every day I put together a PowerPoint slide deck, and I would do a live broadcast every day to all the students, trying to hype up the spirit and the connection and not lose people while they're gone. And I started doing some fun things online to keep people connected. We did an online everyday challenge, a mental health challenge, and we did some journals and connecting people with each other. And that was my first job. Then a year later, we came back to what's called hybrid. So you could come back 2 days a week, like Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, and only half of the class. We still had to keep numbers down. And so at that point, Mr. Pimentel was knocking on doors of kids who weren't logging in on Zoom, trying to find them. And my goal then still was finding ways to connect. So before we brought everybody back, I started doing a slide deck. You guys used some of those this year, where we would say, let me introduce to you this teacher or this staff member. Well, those started during the pandemic. I had every employee create a slide, and I would introduce them so that when all the kids came back, because these were going to be strangers to them. I mean, if you're a senior or a junior, and you were here your first 2 years in the pandemic, you know these people at least, or you recognize them. But if you were a freshman or sophomore and you hadn't been here, you don't know all the junior and senior teachers. Or if you're a freshman coming in, you don't know anybody at the school, and now you're coming back and all these new people. So I started doing the slides in a daily get to know somebody kind of a thing, and tried to do things to connect people and make them. I was trying to do like a pep rally on a PowerPoint to get everybody committed and connected and together. That was my first mission. And then after we came back, it was looking for activities. I worked with our ASB and some of our teams and our clubs, and our goal was, how do we reconnect everyone so that they feel like, okay, we're back, I want to be back, I don't want to be afraid, I want to find my friends. And we did a lot of activities to reconnect folks, a ton of things that initially, just to help everyone feel that sense of, okay, we're back.
There's a lot of questions by people, why are educators trying so hard by knocking on doors? And Mr. Richard said that in education, educated society makes a democratic society. He was implementing that these are our future doctors, lawyers, and it was important not only to have them in the classroom, but engaging in the classroom. Was it tough at first to try to bring students back, especially if attendance went low at 70%?
It was, and it stays that way. I mean, here we are, it's 5 years later than the pandemic, and we still have a few issues with people they got used to either independent study or homeschooling, or didn't have the connections with friends before they came to us, because Indio High School is good about connecting people. And students that were in middle school and elementary that never connected, when they get here and all of a sudden it's like, wow, I wished I'd found my posse sooner. You know, I feel like I fit, I belong. And so for some students that have never been to high school, getting them here now is still a challenge because they got so used to being kind of alone. And I think that's one of the critical things. And what Mr. Pimentel said then is one thing I firmly believe. And this is where I disagree. I have friends that are in private schools, that work in private schools and in charter schools, and I don't have any problems with private schools. But I am firmly a believer that we must protect, preserve, and maintain public education more than anything in this entire country, because that's where we learn how to disagree. We learn how can we cooperate, collaborate, and get along with people that are different than us. Most of the time when people go to a private or a charter school, they're going to a school that's either affiliated with a belief system or a church or something that they find in common. So you don't always have what they say opposites in your belief system. I never took my own children to a private school. I brought them. My daughter was a graduate here too. I brought her here because I wanted her to learn, how do I get along with people that may think differently than me, look differently than me, act differently than me, have choices different than mine, or go to a different church, or don't go to church, or, you know, I wanted her to, because in the world, that's how we have to live. And I wanted her to learn how to have those abilities. And so for me, public school is the most important place in the world, because we educate everyone, nobody's turned away, everyone is welcome to come. And I've had people argue with me about that, and I challenge them, because I've had the wonderful privilege of visiting schools in Europe, in 4 different countries in Europe, and I visited schools in 3 different countries in Asia. I spent twice I spent 2 weeks in schools in China and Thailand. Spent 3 weeks in schools in Thailand doing presentations there about learning English. And one thing I have learned, and in Japan, China, Thailand, and I will tell you, when you hear about schools, people will get online and say things that they can't validate, or they claim that their data is real. I've been in those schools, and I will tell you it's not real. In this country, when you walk into Indio High School, you're going to see students who have no English background. You're going to see students that have disabilities. You'll see students that have physical disabilities or they have learning challenges. Not every country does that. The countries that I went to in Europe and in Asia, if your family has enough money to send you, or if you take a test and you score high enough, but if you have any kind of challenge at all, you don't necessarily get to go to school. If you aren't in a certain language group, you may not get to go to school. But here, everyone belongs. And for me, public school is a place where we learn how to be a civic a participant in our civic engagement in the country, but we also learn how to be civil and how to dialogue and how to interact with people when we don't agree or we don't vote the same. We learn how to cooperate and get along. And we give everyone the chance to raise their lifestyle, because education is the one thing universally that helps people change their future.
One of the things about public school is a lot of public schools serve lunch, breakfast, even supper throughout. And during COVID, they still had that through drive-through. That is something parents and students depend on the daily basis. There has been always talks throughout the years of people trying to advocate to remove that. If that were to happen, what's the effects on that?
In the 50s and 60s, you might have had one parent working and one at home. But in today's world, it takes both parents working to survive and make ends meet. And kids in school are relying on those. And then, of course, when you have areas where economically impacted areas like ours, where families are just barely making ends meet financially, they rely on our school breakfast and lunch program. That's one of the reasons why during the pandemic, every day I didn't just stay in my office. I was out in the street, out in the parking lot with Miss Maggie, and we were bagging up and delivering breakfast and lunch every day, 18,000 of them, because we'd package, for the week and for multiple meals and for the whole family. I don't regret that at all. That was one of the best opportunities for me to get to know parents, since the kids couldn't be here on campus. And I found out just how much families rely on that. We cannot allow that to disappear. We have a lot of, not just Indio, but we have a lot of schools across our country that are very rural, that are far distant from big cities. You look at Northern California, way up in the mountains. You have out here in the desert, you go to Blythe, you go to Needles. You have places that are far and distant. And for our families to have resources and have needs met, I think that's so critically important. And at the same time, man, one of the best things, in Thailand, not everybody gets to go to school. But everyone that was in school, I had the best breakfast every morning. I'd walk in and they cook, all these ladies, all the moms come in, and they literally are cooking this huge breakfast in the morning. Then at lunch, you go back and they have all these things out and they're cooking. We ate outdoors. Their school is like an old barracks building, and we ate outdoors, but they make all three meals right there. Everyone's eating. And in the schools that I was in Thailand, we were way out in the jungle area, and kids would go out and pick the produce. They were growing, like their FFA, they would grow some of that, bring it in,
and cook it.
And they would, while they were in class, after they picked the produce, the parents were in there preparing and cooking it. That is so important. Our families rely on that. And if you have countries that are not as economically able as ours doing that, it is a shame if we're going to say, oh no, we're going to get rid of our meal program. And then you've got countries that are really struggling to provide equal access, and they're doing it. It's like, oh, okay, let me use a little bit of guilt here. You take that away and you're going to really be doing a disservice to our citizens.
Talking about, you commit a lot of time pushing ASB, helping provide meals. Tell me, what kind of recognition and awards have you received over the year, or either as principal here or at other schools?
Well, I have had the honor and privilege of being recognized as the state principal. I was elementary county principal of the year. Then for middle school, I was the state principal of the year and moved to national. I wasn't the top 3 finalists, but I was the national finalist for California to be recognized nationally. And then I just received state high school principal of the year. So that's always been a tremendous honor for me, for them to recognize not me as a person, but the work I do, because I think our kids matter. And then a couple of other pieces of recognition along the way was being recognized for going and advocating for students and for schools. I got an Advocacy Champion Award which means a lot to me because I've always gone to Washington to fight for our school, for our kids. You know, I feel like we deserve to have a voice, and so that meant a lot to me. The best recognition, though, that I ever get in my top file drawer, if you look at the wall, it's not the things on the wall, it's my top drawer. I have a drawer called Blue Notes. And every time a student writes me a note, the best recognition I got one today at the gate. A student wrote me the most beautiful letter thanking me for something. I save every one of those cards and notes, and I have this hanging folder. And so on a day when I'm like exhausted, or when I've had to deal with something that wasn't great, like, you know, when we've had like when we had the fire at the grocery store, or when we have something happen that's not pleasant, I go in and I pull some of those notes out and read them. It just makes my heart warm over again.
Well, congratulations on all those awards. They're well deserved. Let's do a quick rapid round of questions. Basically, like, first thing that comes to mind, what's the best spot on campus? What's the funniest student excuse you have heard?
Oh, I had a student that was late every day, always comes in like a half an hour when everybody's gone. I said, what's the deal? Oh, I'm allergic to car fumes, so I go hang down here and get a tea or at one of the two places, and I wait till all the traffic's gone. I was like, oh no, you're not allergic to car fumes.
What's your favorite school event out of the whole school year?
Oh, my favorite event? I have to say I love the pep rallies because of the joy.
Tell me, what's the last song you listened to?
Oh, on my way to work today, I listened to one called Night Changes by One Direction. It was the last one on the radio, and even though it's about a date and a breakup, the last two lines of the chorus says, even though the night may change, even though the night may change between it won't change between you and me. And I love that. So even though there's going to be a principal change and a school year change, nothing's going to change between me and my students.
Disneyland or Disney World?
Disneyland, that's where the magic is. I love Disney World, but it doesn't have the same feeling of magic that Disneyland does.
One word to describe India High School.
Family.
One word to describe your retirement.
It's going to take 3. 4. Time with my wife.
And do you have any, what's your favorite student nickname that you got in?
Oh, you're going to laugh at this one. Goat. And the reason is my first year when I was here, the teachers all said, we have a horrible lunch area because there's trash everywhere because we had 3 campuses, and they gave me all these things. They said, your first thing is to get kids to pick up their trash and make us proud and our campus look good. And so I worked hard at that, but I made some good connections with some guys that they called themselves my posse, and they were going to look out for me. And I thought I'd made this connection with these juniors and seniors, and I was so happy. And then all of a sudden on Instagram, and I started the Instagram and Facebook account for the school, and I went home, and all of a sudden they put this little emoji of a goat, and they kept calling me the goat. And I went home and I told my wife, I don't know, I was miserable. I said, they think I'm an old goat.
Oh.
And I had no idea. And then the next day, one of them says, you know what that means? I go, yeah, I'm old and you don't want me around. No, it means greatest of all time. And at first I was so depressed because I thought they were calling me an old goat that was washed up and needed to be put out to pasture.
That's funny. So before we wrap up, let's look at your retirement. What was the decision that led to that? Was this something you've been planning on, or was it more of out of the moment?
No, it was really at the last minute because I was going to turn 63, and usually about 2 years before you're 65, 2 years before you retire, the state retirement starts sending you emails about come to this planning meeting so you can start getting things in order. So I scheduled it. And I went to the meeting, and that was in February 20th. That was that last Saturday, February, whatever that was. So I went to the meeting thinking, oh, a couple of years. Well, then the guy comes and kind of lectures me and says, why did you wait until 90 days before retirement to come to this meeting? You should have been planning for the last 2 years. And I'm like, I'm doing that. I've got a couple more years. And he handed me the worksheet where they look at what your pay is and how much credit you have and all that. And he said, do you realize that in about 4 more weeks, you're going to be working for free? And I'm like, what? Well, because I've been at this for 40 years and because I have almost 2 years of sick leave and all that, the calculation for me is that I started working for free about a month ago, and I had no idea. And he says, yeah, because you've worked so long, you get a different percentage. And I had no idea. So then I started thinking about that. That was the first 2 weeks of March, and I thought, yes, I will. No, I won't. Yes, I will. No, I won't. And then a friend of mine got very ill that was not yet retired, and then one person that had retired had a stroke, and my wife said, don't wait so long that we don't get to enjoy being together. And then I always told the teachers that I wanted to retire while people still want me around and not when they were like, oh, when is this old guy gonna leave? So I made the decision, and I'm grateful that I did, simply because a few weeks ago we lost a teacher that was a friend at Indio Middle. I'm a little bit older than him. We were both the same age, but I'm a few months older, and my kids had him at Indio Middle, and he was planning to retire. He just hadn't turned in his paperwork, and then all of a sudden we lost him. And when that happened, it made me think, okay, I'm exactly the same age. I don't want that to happen. And so I'd rather go now when things are great and not wait. So that was my decision when I made the decision.
As you retire, you're leaving behind a legacy. What's next for you? What are your plans? Are you planning to travel, stay local?
We're going to stay in the same house and stay local, but we will do a little travel here and there. My wife and I want to go see, we've been to the Grand Canyon with our kids, and we did Yosemite. I've never been to Yosemite or Yellowstone or the, like Bryce and Zion, the national parks that are all along there. So we'd like to see some of those kinds of things and do little short trips to see national parks while we can still get around, and for me to hike and lose some weight. So we'll do that, and then I'm going to be doing some coaching of new principals for the state association, and I'll still do training for them. And then the national principals that I've been a part of, there's some opportunities for me to still participate with them and help the 9 West Coast states and help principals in the West Coast. So I'll still be doing some of that kind of stuff.
So your last day is June 30th, students leave June 5th. As those 2 dates come up, how are you feeling? What do you feel now? What do you think you'll feel then?
I try not to focus on either one because it leaves me very choked up. I'm dreading the last day of students. Graduation is going to be hard, and the last day of school will be hard because that's all I've ever known. I love to be with students. That's why I never moved up. Principal was my destination because I want to be with students. So that's going to be a difficult day for me because I just love being around. That's what keeps me feeling young, and I want to give them opportunities that were given to me. And for the last day of June, when my final day comes here and I have to turn in my keys, that's going to be a very solemn day for me because it's closing a chapter that I remember years ago when I was starting out, I thought, oh, retirement's like 1,000,000 years in the future. And I always tell you guys every August, blink and it's going to be your senior year. Blink and it's going to be graduation. And I remember telling myself, I'm going to blink one day and it's going to be my last day. And I never really believed myself. I tell you guys, everybody says, Lawson, we didn't believe you, and now it is our last year. I never believed that was coming, and now it's coming quick, and I'm having a hard time with that coming so fast.
I know, blinking is so true. Junior year for me, it's crazy to see 2 years gone that fast. Finally, before we go, if somebody, and from a decade and from now, somebody asks somebody, who was Mr. Lawson? What do you hope them to say, and what legacy to leave behind?
I hope that both students in the future and staff in the future will always look back and say, because of him, we felt like we were seen, we were heard, and we were valued. That's the number one thing. I've always been transparent and very honest with every single one of our students and staff. They know exactly who I am, and what I'm like, and what I believe in. I've always been just as transparent and real, and I always would strive to help everyone feel that they could reach their potential. I had people around me at Indio High School that saw potential in me and helped me learn how to be resilient and to learn determination, and that my story was not written in stone, and that I could still write my future and write my story. And for my legacy, I hope that every student that I ever encounter and every parent that I taught today, I hope they still say the same things. He believed in us when we weren't sure we could believe in ourselves, and he helped us learn that we had the power to write our future and our own story. I think that's probably the one thing I want most.
That is very beautiful. Mr. Lawson, thank you for being with us today. That wraps up our show. Before we go, you'll sing the Indio High School alma mater as our closing?
Oh, that's the one thing I love bringing back to all the pep rallies, because we used to end every pep rally with the alma mater, and I led that as a senior, as commissioner of activities all the time. And so I hope I brought back pride in the alma mater by doing that for the last 9 years. And for those of you that don't know it on camera, it's very simple. Hail to thee, O Indio High School. Hail scarlet and royal blue. As your faithful sons and daughters, we will always be true. On together is our watchword, till our cause is won. Hail to thee, O Indio High School, beneath the desert sun. Thank you, Indio High School, for a 9-year journey. Thank you for letting me be a part of changing your trajectory in life and being a part of your journey. You've definitely been an enriching part of mine, and I will always cherish these 9 years with you.
Mr. Derrick Lawson, thank you for being on today's show. We wish you the best in your retirement. We will truly, truly miss you. And I don't know what to say. It's kind of so saddening to see that these are the very last moments as
Well, thank you,
go
Anthony.
out.
I appreciate that, and I am so thrilled when I look out there and I see you with your camera. I'm like, whoa, somebody's got to be following after I'm gone. Somebody's got to be out there and taking tons and tons and tons of pictures of everyone, because my mission for 9 years has been to give everybody memories of their time in high school. So that's why I took so many thousands of pictures. That's also how I learned people's names, but I wanted them to have memories, and I'm so glad you are out there taking more than me now. So somebody's going to take up the gauntlet.
It was super fun. I was looking back at images that you took from last year and years prior. It's incredible to see progression and improvement over the time here on campus, and your photography will truly be missed.
Well, thank you, and thank you to all of you here in the studio, and thank you out there in the audience. You've been my heartbeat for the last 9 years, and I sure do value each and every one of you.
Thank you. That's Mr. Derrick Lawson.
Thank you.